have two segments for you today, and just gonna go through the first one. Feel free to interrupt me. I'm just gonna go through the first game, where I wrote some notes on Liverpool Norwich. So my first note was that Van Dijk was like staying up a long time after the corner. Obviously, they like stay with the men forward after a corner, and I wrote that before his header on a corner, so that was a little bit funny, even though it wasn't the same kind of situation, because that header came right from the corner. But yeah, they like to basically chill by the box and hope Robertson and Alexander-Arnold, they play around and then they get a good ball in. So that's nice to see. If you have Van Dijk, think there's going to be people said, oh, he's not going to score 4 or 5 goals every season, but I think he will quite easily score 4 or 5 goals, no problem there. I wrote that I think Pukki, I haven't seen him in the championship. I really think he had good ball handling, and I also wrote that before the goal. So he had one really nice sequence, and then he had a bad sequence where he was a little bit sloppy, and then he had the goal. So it's a high tempo environment, but I think that he handled it pretty well. So if they can start feeding him the ball, basically, I can see him being a value pick. They played with high risk and high pressure Norwich, which I liked. Obviously, it's not going to work, but I like that, try to get some points and not just park the bus like Aston Villa did. And actually that almost went well for them, but it usually doesn't end well. You usually concede at the end. You saw how many mistakes they made. So I like Norwich philosophy a little bit more there. And then I wrote Robertson had more opportunities than TAA, but it evened out afterwards. But I felt like Robbo had more interesting positioning, but I don't know. TAA just feels a little bit more dangerous, and I'm pretty glad overall that I have him. Anyone else wants to add something to that?
Probably the least surprising game of any of them, really. Like, everything went, apart from maybe them conceding a sloppy goal, nothing kind of went how I didn't think it would go, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
When I chose Robertson eventually over Trent, I, even in doing so, kind of accepted that I expected on a per game basis Trent would get more points, but I just wanted that extra kind of 5% insurance of him definitely starting. Even if it's like, I just think Robertson at some point in the season will be rotated less than Trent. It might not be for the first 7 or 8 games, so it might not really matter in the context of things. But yeah, nothing really surprising. I think we'll talk about Origi a bit later on, so I'll kind of leave that for now. But pretty standard Liverpool performance.
Yeah, it's the whole Alisson situation I was thinking about. That might be interesting, because whenever Van Dijk fucks up, they always have an Alisson standing behind him, clawing the ball. And how will Alisson, that's now being confirmed by Klopp, weeks out, how will that affect their clean sheet potential? I don't know. It's an interesting situation to monitor, really. We can probably see some tendencies already on Wednesday when they play the Super Cup, but so it will be an interesting one. And if we all of a sudden lose clean sheet potentials again from the 7 million assets,
I think that could be like one reason to not double up if you're not already doubled up. But if you're doubled up, I'm just gonna stay put, But I like the fact that you mentioned this because you're right. They usually like concede one really big chance a game, and then Alisson is there to save them.
Yeah.
Sam, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I think people will argue that you're still going to get the attacking output from Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, but sorry, what I would say is that without the baseline of the kind of 4 points for clean sheets coming probably once every 2 games, I don't think that even with the kind of assist and goals potential, they make up then value in that kind of price. At the price they are this season, I think without a steady stream of clean sheets, there are going to be better options. But yeah, I think like it's pretty much as you said. I wouldn't change anything right now. I wouldn't be scrabbling to get Adrian in. I wouldn't be currently panicking about getting rid of my Liverpool defenders. I think it's just
wait and watch, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
there's something to pay attention to, and I also felt Trent Alexander-Arnold was a little bit sloppy here and there defensively. So there's 2 things that sort of talking against the Liverpool defense right now. So it's an interesting point to look at.
Yeah, for me, it's one other big thing as well, and it's Joe Gomez. Actually, I don't think he is close to Matip. I know he's a great talent. He has great speed, but on the goal, he was sloppy. Even though it was Robertson who, made it so it wasn't offside. Still, Gomez, it was his man probably, and a bunch of times in the Community Shield as well. If you're gonna play in that team and be a starter for that team, I like the assets less when Gomez is on the pitch basically. But he seems to be favored by Klopp whenever he is healthy. So that's a bit worrying. I'd like to see some stats on, Matip versus Gomez for clean sheets, actually. I'm going to take a look into that. Okay. Should we move on? Next game.
Yeah.
So my next notes were just very brief, but it was City West Ham, also kind of expected, but maybe not. I guess this match could end in like 2 ways. One is that West Ham is like super defensive and hard to break down and ends up losing 1-0, or we're not used to see that from West Ham. It happens occasionally, but so that wasn't to happen. So City had some fun. It could have scored like 2 or 3 goals more actually. But my notes were that KDB was everywhere. Very, I'm very afraid of him right now. He looks like he can score 2 assists per game. And I think he had the 2nd highest expected assists this game week. And it was an away game. West Ham is not always like easy to break down I remember captaining Hazard last season versus West Ham and stuff, and didn't go well. And the other note was that I thought Walker was the best defender on the pitch. He had a really interesting position sometimes. He's like this inverted central midfield guy sometimes, and he likes to make sprints into the box as well. We saw that in the Community Shield when I think Sterling passed it right on to Alisson or something, and Walker would have just had an easy tap in. This time Walker did get a offensive return. So if you have Walker, I would be thrilled about it right now. Don't think you can rotate him even for Pep with this form that he's in. And honorable mention was probably Ederson in this game, who kept it clean when he had some tough stuff going on.
You gotta love the cockiness from Ederson, just being so cold with the ball in your feet all the time. It's fun to look at.
Looks like real close sometimes too.
Yeah.
But he's good at, that's the beautiful thing when you play football yourself too, and you play against this guy who just knows what's going on, and you think and you feel like you're pretty close to him, but he just in control and just outplays you. That's cool. Anything else on that game?
I think of every single person I watched this weekend, and I have watched every game at some point. Sterling looks like the one you've got to have right now. I mean, the guy's incredible. Like, he just looks like he hasn't missed a beat from last season. He was unlucky to not have an assist. I think he had one ruled out. Was one of his ruled out from VAR? Aguero could have very easily given him the penalty for the hat trick. Could have been looking at a record-breaking score. So if I was, obviously I'm not, but if I was doing a wild card of sorts, he would be the first name in my team above all others. And I kind of just wanted to call out Sebastian Haller for West Ham. I thought he looked semi-reasonable with very little service. A near impossible game to judge him on, but he looked lively. His movement was okay. He had a half chance early on, which I think Edison made a good save from. So it's positive. They've got a much better run coming up. So I kind of think there'll be a time around game week 3-4, and I think a lot of people will be looking at moving a couple of guys on for who haven't done it in the first 2 weeks, and he's done nothing to kind of take him out of my thinking. So
you had an interesting link with Felipe Anderson as well. That looked like a fun link, actually. Yeah. Walker was fun to look at. You can see that he feels the competition and he really steps up when he really needs to. And my God, he runs fast when he pushes the limit on the right side there.
Yeah, I said it to you guys in the chat. He wants to boost his FIFA rating, right? Makes those maniac runs, even though he knows he won't get the ball.
Yeah, he's fun to look at.
Yeah, he's such a beast. He's so underrated. Yeah, but it's really crazy that they bought Cancelo when Walker is this good.
Yeah,
we'll see what they'll do with him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
The next game, I had some notes because I saw it. I've seen 2 more games, which was on Swedish television. So first one was Watford-Brighton. Kind of interesting game. It was hard for the first half for me to pick the best side. Gross is back, but I think, I'm not sure. Did he went out with an injury or did he come back from that in mid-game? I don't remember.
He didn't. I thought he finished the game. I thought they only made the 2 subs, which was the 2 forwards. I might be wrong, but I think that's what the case was.
Yeah, my conclusion of that game was probably it was a strange result, and Brighton were a bit lucky to win, especially with 3 goals. Not many great chances from what I saw, and still managed to score 3. So yeah, I wouldn't count on. I'm still basically not ready to trust them yet either in whichever part of the field that you're interested in. Yeah, it's my analysis.
Yeah, I think a few people punted on Martin Montoya playing the out of position, and that definitely looked to be the case. He was definitely playing more as a right midfielder than any sort of defender. So, if out of position defenders get you excited, then he's definitely one on the list. Like you said, it's a difficult game to draw any real conclusions from. I think the XG was actually pretty close. One player that, even though it was Andone who scored immediately after he came on, I was more impressed with Morpai's goal. The running behind the defence, the way he took it around the keeper, good finish from a tight angle. I think he's going to be the one that emerges throughout the season. There's obviously no reason to take a risk on it right now. He's cheap. He's not going to be in many teams, so I think it can still be a wait and see. But he's the one I'm most excited by in their side.
Yeah, good shout. I think I just looked at the XG of both of these teams. Watford had 0.67 and Brighton had 0.86. So
Clinical.
Yeah. Murray on their side, he brings the clinicalness, spreads it towards his teammates. Okay, last game I watched it wasn't the last game I watched, but the last game that was interesting because I looked at Spurs, Aston Villa, and right off the bat, Aston Villa had a great counterattack with McGinn scoring pretty nice goal, actually, even though Danny Rose fumbled and stumbled. First half and some part of second half, it was really slow, like ball movement from Spurs. I wrote during the game that Kane's sharpness felt blown away. Like, why isn't he scoring on his opportunities? And then that went on and happened, and he scored twice in the end. But I also wrote Aston Villa had no offensive play of their own, had no possession. It must have been so hard to look at from Villa perspective, and just feeling like, we're basically hopeless against the premium teams. Because, for instance, with Norwich, they did have some nice attacks against Liverpool. Okay, they probably didn't deserve much more than one goal, but still, if they would have been efficient, clinical, like we said Brighton was, then Norwich, they had the same expected goals like Brighton. They could have scored 3. Like Liverpool was pretty fumbly in defense, and I think Van Dijk pointed that out in the interview afterwards as well. Yeah, so that was my notes. People said before the game, like, Spurs is definitely a contender for the title race potentially, and then I just recognize old Spurs again. They usually break down these kinds of teams by the end of the game, but sometimes they don't, and they just get a shitty result versus like Burnley or a team that is a little bit better in defending than Aston Villa were.
I guess you can say you had Spurs with Eriksen and Spurs without Eriksen. That was 2 different Spurs sides, really. Kane woke up once his Danish little friend came on. I read someplace that the greatest thing Pochettino could do in the break is offer Eriksen 300,000 a week. What he should have done in the halftime.
Yeah.
Because they lacked some creativity without him on the field. It sort of looked. They had good chances, but it wasn't that impressive. But Aston Villa, you have players like Jack Grealish just losing the ball and not exactly knowing what football is right there. That was my only thought from the game, really, that Spurs was 2 different teams with and without Eriksen.
Just like I think Manchester United just looked better with Wan-Bissaka and Maguire. It almost didn't matter how they lined up with the rest of the team. Just when the defense works, the rest of you can like be secure in that, and then when you go forward, you can do it more freely, and it's more fun because you're safer in defense. And it was a little bit the same thing with Ndombele when he just putting him on the pitch. It just seems secure, and they get a new dimension in their play. But as you say, they still need Eriksen or Lo Celso, probably Son as well. It was a little bit strange. I think it's strange for Pochettino to play all of his 3 like CDMs at the same time versus Aston Villa. I really didn't get that. So the Eriksen substitution was definitely needed, and I think he sees that he can't play it like that against at least in home games and against like sides that are tipped to be in the bottom. So I think he's going to change that up, and I hope he will. So this new segment is called Expendable or Dependable. And we've come up with some projections. How likely is it that these players are going to play? And so in this segment, we focus on the guys that might be dropped to the bench, or they might play and they might be great value. So let's start with Manchester City. I have Mahrez at just 60% because Bernardo didn't play. I know Mahrez was great, but how good is he defensively? And Bernardo is better defensively. So it depends how he wants to line up. I still have him at 60%, so more likely than not, but it's basically a coin flip for me. So Sam, what do you think?
I'm going to go 40%. I actually lean that he won't start, pretty much for the reasons you've said. I think he's maybe to call him a luxury player is a little bit harsh, but he's someone that's definitely going to be benefiting you when you're playing against a weaker team and you're like a significantly weaker team and your main aim is just breaking them down. I think against a team like Spurs where they can threaten, particularly with the fullbacks, I think he'll prefer Bernardo Silva to kind of retain the ball a bit better, play a little bit deeper and kind of carry it through the lines rather than just an out-and-out winger. I would be very surprised if we didn't see Mahrez at some point during the game, particularly if they need a goal later on, but I expect Bernardo Silva will come in and Mahrez will drop to the bench.
Cool. Yogi?
I think it's a little hand in hand on whether he plays Aguero or Jesus, actually.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think it links up better with Jesus up top than he does with Aguero.
Okay, so you want to go to the next one then? I have Jesus at just 20%, and the reason is basically because Guardiola said that Jesus was so good, and now Aguero has to feel competition, and that makes me think like it's like he's just ready to put Jesus on the bench after saying that, and just saying to Aguero, okay, now you're gonna show that you're better than him, basically. And it's versus Spurs, and I don't think he trusts Jesus in a game like this as much as he does with Aguero, who always shows up for the big games. Sam, where's your percentage at?
I'm gonna go 30%, which is maybe a little bit higher than my gut tells me, but purely because I've not yet seen Aguero complete 90 minutes. So there's a slight question in my mind whether he's back to full match fitness after the break and having played with Argentina. I expect him to be, which is obviously why 70% think that he will be the one that starts. But if he's still a bit rusty, Jesus played well enough that I think Guardiola could start him without fear. But yeah, I mean, Aguero for me is still a better striker, so I'd expect him to be given the nod.
Well, I think Pep sort of made a statement starting Jesus over Aguero. You can remember Brazil went longer than Argentina in the Copa America. So he was away for a longer time, and also you can see like City is doing this sort of transition from the older guys to the younger guys, and they sort of try to link up the entirety of the younger guys with Rodri and all those guys, and it sort of looks like he's sort of making a statement of that right now. And I think maybe City looked like a better collective attack with Jesus up top, because he made a lot of spaces for Sterling that Sterling could just run around in and have fun with, and KDB got some room to be creative again, and then he could play Mahrez on the side, which could do crosses to Jesus, which Jesus he's amazing at finding those little rooms to run into, and he's so quick. And that, in my opinion, I think maybe Pep sort of made a statement that this might be the year that I will put more emphasis on Jesus. So I might be as bold as put him up at 45%, actually.
Okay. Good.
But because I sort of think he's transitioning Aguero to more an off-the-bench striker, which can change the game, sort of. He's sort of swapping the roles of those two, sort of. Because Aguero has slowly gone down and become an older guy who doesn't always deliver.
Yeah, I can see your point with that. My counter argument is like it looks a lot like he was resting Aguero for this Spurs game.
But then again, why would he rest him over the guy that played longer in the international break?
I mean, I would say because he's older and maybe just needs a bit more time.
Yeah.
Obviously we're all mere pawns in the world that Pep Guardiola operates in. But if I was to guess, I would just say Jesus is kind of generally a bit fresher.
Yeah.
Pep
has this wheel at home. He just
yeah, or he just didn't even know. He just woke up in the morning and just like someone handed him a bit of paper and it just said Jesus on it. And he went, "All right, fine."
Sort of.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a roulette. You're really gonna try to do a roulette in the video, like
maybe he has just like picking different people from the squad. Which lineup do you want to see today? And then it just sort of transists around that and build a team. Okay, we do it like this and we do it like that. It's okay. I'm bold. It's okay.
Cool. With the impressions, more of those, please. Okay. So next team will go for Liverpool. I just think Gomez hasn't been up to par. So I could see definitely Klopp switching things up and put some pressure on Gomez. So I think there's a reasonable chance he play Matip. So I have put Gomez at 80% as well.
The Liverpool section, I guess, is interesting because I think we can probably learn a bit from the team he puts out in the Super Cup on Wednesday night. I don't think he will start a lot of his. I'd be surprised. The amount he's complained about the early start of the season and his players not having enough time, I would find it strange if he put a very strong side out. I'm sure he'll feature a few of the guys from, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes maybe, but he'll rest a few. So I think if we see Matip playing in midweek, I would expect that would mean Joe Gomez would come back in at the weekend. I still think it's probably 75-80% that Gomez retains his plays. Like you said, he was not great for Norwich's goal, but he had a reasonable game. It's another it's a very winnable game against Southampton, and with Arsenal coming after that, I think Klopp will like to give Gomez another chance. If he plays well against Southampton, gets his confidence up, then he can kind of retain that settled back four for the big game against Arsenal. So yeah, I'd go 75-80%. He'll be playing again.
Yeah, I didn't really watch that game, so I didn't know how bad of a blunder he was.
It wasn't that bad, but my overall impression of him last season was good. This season, he doesn't look like he's mentally there yet.
No. And you have Matip, which is not bad, really.
It's been really good, Matip.
Yeah. So maybe he just wants to put some healthy competition on the spot. Try Gomez a couple of... You'll probably see whoever he plays on Wednesday, most likely who he's going to play on. And I could almost see him playing Gomez on Wednesday and then just tossing Matip out there in the weekend again.
Let's talk about Origi. I've seen quite a few teams with Origi. Surprising amount, actually. I guess it was a good punt. I didn't really feel it, but it worked out. But yeah, I think Mane is too good to not play, of course, from the start. And Firmino too. I think Klopp wants to bring out the big guns for this away game. So I put Origi at 20%.
Okay, as of now, where we don't know the lineup for the Super Cup, this is my most fence-sitting selection. I'm gonna go 50% for Origi purely because I don't know Mane's fitness for sure. The Arsenal game is the big one. I think Southampton can get through this game without him. What I've heard a lot of Liverpool fans say is that Mane is actually really unheralded for the kind of defensive work he does for the team, and he does a lot more kind of tracking back, tucking in, winning the ball, and kind of driving forward. Whereas I don't think, I'm not having a dig at Origi because he played really well against Norwich, but I don't think you get that much of that kind of type of play from Origi. He's more just driving the ball, putting it across, trying to create chances, which particularly against the weak team, that's definitely something you need. So I could definitely see him starting against Southampton. It wouldn't surprise me, and then Mane getting another half hour to bet himself back in. But equally, I could see him starting the Super Cup game and then Mane being thrust back in on Saturday. So 50-50. I toss a coin. I don't know. Yogi knows.
I see Origi as a placeholder for Mane. So I guess, in my opinion, I think it's 5% he starts. Mane is going to get back. Mane is going to need the match fitness before the Arsenal game. And yeah, he's putting the band back together now. So he sort of looked at this Norwich game as a preseason game almost, it looked like. So with Origi playing there still. It's sort of rough to say, but still. I'm sorry, any Norwich fan out there, but Origi is, and he's complained a lot. Mane has played a lot since the Champions League final. He's barely had any rest, but these are top athletes, and I don't think you really need that much more rest now. And it looked fresh when he was out there, and yeah. So I say 5% on Origi, really.
The rest of our big list is going up on Patreon. Let's talk about Barkley for first. He's quite tricky to evaluate. I'm really concerned now that he went off in the 58th minute. I get this sorry vibes that anything can happen with Barkley now, even though he played a lot in preseason and he was very good in preseason. So I still think he's going to play, but I'm really concerned, and I'm not going to be shocked if he drops to the bench, even though I think he was decent. But since he went out when I think he was decent, Frank must have disliked him in some way. So I'm going to say maybe 60% that Barkley starts the next game, probably.
Yeah, I don't think there's been any questions asked of Lampard as to why it was Barkley that was removed. My sort of take on it, just as someone watching the game, was that you kind of got slightly faster play in transition from Mason Mount. And at the time he was taken off, I think it was still 1-0. I think they were still 1-0 down. And I think they were kind of starting to try and play almost like a counter attack to what United were doing. And while I think Barkley's a really decent player, I would say he's more like a playmaker on the ball rather than someone you would be looking to kind of drive a counter attack. Whereas Mount's a little bit faster. It's Leicester, isn't it? Leicester at home, the next game. I would expect them to start with Barkley in that game. If anything, I could see possibly Mount replaced by Pulisic, even though I don't think he had a bad game. I just think he might go for someone who's a little more, a little more experienced at kind of top level football. I guess you'd say Pulisic is. I'm going to put Barkley at 70%. Again, like you, Oscar, I thought he had a good game. I was very surprised when he was replaced, but I can only assume it was more like a game plan reason than a performance reason. What was your take on it, Yogi?
Well, Barkley played in a weird position. That's my first take, because that's the first time he played on the left wing. He was not locked at the left wing, but he sort of got locked down out there, and it wasn't his fit to play out there. When he has excelled during preseason, he has played in the position Mount played in, sort of, but Mount drifted everywhere as well. I think there was something weird going on because, William was out, so Pedro had to play, and I don't really know why he swapped off Barkley over Pedro, because Pedro was clearly the one playing bad there, but maybe it's just a sign of respect, I don't know. But it's a real toss-up because Mason Mount did an amazing job, I felt, and Barkley did pretty good up until he was subbed off as well, so those two are sort of in a direct competition. I feel like in an ideal world he would play Mount, Pulisic, and Barkley up top, but it might be hard for him to bench one of the veteran guys. But again, we get some indication during the Super Cup, and I think I would place Barkley at 75% because I'm not sure, but it looks like Frank wants to play in a way where he can use both of them and not just one of them, because both have excelled under Frank, and sort of like Mount is how Jorginho was to Sarri, Mount is to Lampard. He's like his boy. He knows how to do his stuff, and Barkley sort of excels when he gets a more free number 10 role, because I don't know, he's better at that. That's just so, yeah. That's sort of my consideration on the whole Barkley Mount situation. It's one of the hardest one to predict, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the last player for this show then is going to be Pepe. I decide that. But he's very interesting. I just had it on in the background, the Arsenal game. It wasn't that fun, I felt. Pepe came on in like 75th minute, and I didn't see him touch the ball, but maybe he did. But I've seen a lot of him in the French league, just highlights really. But he looks like a mini Neymar. But Emery didn't even play like a set. I was shocked by that. I in one way, I was shocked. In another way, it's Emery. This stuff happens all the time with Emery. So maybe I shouldn't have been that shocked. But it's hard to say. For me, Pepe, I think he's on the lower side than 50%, especially since Lacazette didn't even play. So I guess maybe he hasn't had a proper preseason, Pepe, and I think it's too soon to go for him in FPL. So I guess he will come on. I think it's like 20% that he'll start. And he will come on and he will do something. That's my prediction. Sam, what do you say?
This is interesting. This is probably the one we're going to differ on the most. So I think Burnley are the kind of team that Arsenal notoriously struggle against. They'll sit in deep. They'll keep it tight. They're very good at being very rigid. And if Arsenal can't play between the lines and can't take men on one and beat them, I think they will fail to win the game. Pepe is the best player who has a chance of being able to really kind of isolate. Is it Matt Loughton that plays on the right-hand side of Burnley's defence? I think either way, either their fullbacks, they're both good defenders, but I think if you have someone of real talent and real pace running at them, they're going to cause them absolute nightmares. If the only question really is he even able to start a game? Like, is he fit enough to start a game, having not had a lot of a pre-season? So that is a genuine question. And that's the only reason I'm not going in the kind of 80% region for what I'm predicting. So I'm gonna say 60% because I don't know that he's match fit. But I think it's the kind of game that at the Emirates as well, I feel like we all know that the Emirates can be a difficult place for Arsenal if they're struggling. The atmosphere can fall very flat pretty quickly. The fans can get on their back. I think for the first game at home, Emery's going to want to go out all guns blazing, lift the crowd, get an early goal, and just kind of keep momentum going and build off that first result. Where, let's face it, I thought they were very poor against Newcastle going forward. They were lucky that Lascelles went for a little wander in his mind and completely just let Aubameyang do whatever he wanted for the goal. Otherwise, they could have come away with a 0-0. So, yeah, I think he's going to give Pepe a run. I'm going to go 60% because I think they need him, whether he's 100% fit or not. So, yeah, that's my verdict.
Well, I barely paid attention to that much when Pepe came on. I paid more attention when
Alan St. Maximin is his name.
Yeah, St. Maximin, yeah.
Okay.
I actually woke up when he came on. That was more interesting than looking at Pepe. Because Arsenal is, I don't know, Emery, he does weird stuff. He put on a B team. It was like, this is my starting 11. But what about the bench you have there? I don't know. It's sort of in the Arsenal like spirit, just you never realize what's going on there, and just weird things, like I said, not playing. But I guess, I don't know. Pepe has come from French league, and can he be good at the Premier League? That's the one thing that's still an uncertainty, and he needs to probably ease him in so he won't start. So I guess I'll put him at the 30% or 20%. He won't start, but he will play.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay. So, good. So as I said, I think we're gonna do a Patreon article, hopefully with the rest of the list, because there are obviously a couple of other guys in the other teams that people own, and they don't know what to do about them. So until next Game Week 2 preview, I'll see you guys, and thanks for watching, and thanks for joining me. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.